9 o'clock's rolled around, we'll get going with the solid waste board meeting this morning. First order of business, can you call the roll, please?
Mike Bell.
Here.
Bill Britton.
Here.
Tony Cox.
Here.
Bob Garrett.
Here.
Tim Horner.
Here.
Steve Jackson.
Here.
Matt Lacy.
Present.
Ventrus Norfolk.
Here.
Tom Rush.
Here.
Dennis Barnes.
Here.
Thank you everyone for coming out this morning. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Anyone have something you'd like to share with the board this morning?
Yes, Mr. Cox.
Yes, ma'am.
I would, my name is Gwendolyn Holden, and I would like for Mr. Dennis Barnes to continue being the director of the landfill, and us not privatizing it, because I feel like he's doing a good job, and that's where he should be. He's been with y'all for a long time, and y'all should consider him being the director and leaving the landfill the way that it is. Thank you.
Anyone else? Dennis, you
Yeah.
consider $1.
Yeah.
I don't need $1, I'm not telling you mine.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll chip in another $1 on that. I think he should be retained too.
Thank you.
But my major thing, or the other item that I like to bring up today, is I want to see a written statement from your attorney, not Mr. Garrett's quote, "Oh, he said it was okay," when you voted to terminate Dan Winter and when you voted to deny the benefits. Those were unusual votes. You have an 8-member voting board, and yet you terminated somebody with a 4-3 vote, not a majority of the board. And then you denied benefits, 3, 4 denying benefits, none against, and 3 abstaining. Those are extremely unusual votes. In county commission, unless Mr. Capps would change his opinion that he's already stated numerous times, neither of those votes would have passed. So I want to know what the rule is on votes with a solid waste board. And you need to know that. Did you properly terminate him? That's your job to find out if you did something correctly. And it's your attorney's job to tell you and not just say, sure, it's fine. There's a legal basis for it or there's not. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? All right, the next item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes that are in your packet. What's your pleasure?
Make a motion. Second.
Motion and second to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes stand as approved. Rolling right along. Amy, tell us about our dollars.
Okay, you should have received your financial packet on Wednesday afternoon. Just a couple of items to point out. On the statement of net position, in accounts payable included in the $225,000 is the payable to East Tennessee Turf of just under $198,000. You'll also see that on the statement of revenues and expenses in capital expenditures for the closure. Steve may expand more a little bit later, but he had some computer issues at his office, and so you'll notice on the expenses we don't have the accrual for engineering services for the month. He's hoping, I think, to have that this week, today. So that's why that's not included in there. And just a couple of new accounts, or really just one. You'll notice, and we did this as part of the budget where we've broken out the computer and IT services. That's account 400 on the expenses, just for clarity. And of course that includes the annual fee we paid to Computer Concepts, the $6,000, and then PDS as well. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Anyone have anything for Amy? Tom, anything on our holding, our investment accounts?
Nothing's changed. Our interest rate doubled from 0.01 to 0.02.
Right along. We had to make a draw.
Big money.
It did double, so
So we moved some money from capital for the postal project.
Yes.
but,
That's correct.
all right, so financially, we're in pretty good shape. Dennis, tell us about your visits with the TDEC.
You had, last month, we didn't have a visit until after the meeting, no violations. This month, no violations. We got that wet well wizard put in for the ammonia. And there was a couple of things that the state wanted us to do, and me and the state looking into that. It's not a big financial thing to do. It's something that may end this gas problem they say we have or don't have. And that's about this month.
How's the volume coming across the scales? I haven't paid attention. Are people still doing summer cleanup and?
It's steady. It's not changed. Yeah, there's still quite a bit coming in from the public.
Yeah. I gathered that, I'm seeing a lot of those activities out there. All right, any other questions for Dennis? Well, it looks like the long report's gonna come to you, Steve. Tell us about what's going on.
Well, first of all, I'd like to apologize about the invoices. That's what happens when you get an update on software the last day of the month. And 2 weeks later, they said, oh yeah, we know what that problem is, and send us a patch. Mitzi's not happy, so nobody's happy around here.
Yes, I understand that.
Kind of following up on what Dennis said, we're still working with TDEC on the gas monitoring. I had 2 conference calls, and then we had an on-site meeting with 2 representatives from Knoxville, 1 from Nashville, 1 from Chattanooga. I guess that was last week. And finally, we got them to agree that the new probes we installed, we can utilize those for our monitoring, for our permit requirements. And they're asking for monthly monitoring for a couple more months to satisfy them that we're in compliance, which once they said those probes are good, then we're in compliance. But they've asked Dennis to put a couple more trenches in around those 2 probes that have been the only 2 high readings on the entire landfill, but they're up in the landfill. So once we get these trenches in, get those levels down, we can abandon them. We've already been told about 2 months ago we could abandon them, but it depends on who you talk to. So anyway, we're gonna do our some more monitoring next week. We have to rent the instrument to do the monitoring because they want readings in parts per billion. And the instrument you guys have got won't do those readings. And it's easier to rent that thing. It's like, to buy it, it's like $70,000. So we just rent it when we need to do the monitoring. The assessment of corrective measures, I think, Tony, you've got that down on item 3.
Right.
If we could, before we leave today, we need to set a meeting date. And what the state wanted was us to do that after you made a decision on operations.
Okay.
We told them that we'd rather hold off until then so we know. Your ammonia surcharges from MUS, Dennis did a great job installing the wet well wizard. And those levels have dropped. The last 2 samples, they're down about 60%. But I don't think they're gonna drop far enough with that installation to get you out of those surcharges. That's unless we could aerate it for probably a month. We'd have to build probably 100,000 gallon tank and put 5 or 6 of these in there to keep aerating it. And it's done a good job for, you know, the detention time that we've got in the wet well. We're gonna keep an eye on it for about another month, and then next month we'll report back to you on what we need to do. We met, reviewed the submittal for the operator, and met with the committee. As far as the closure goes, excuse me, all the compacted clay is in. They've installed all 30 gas vents, the synthetic liner's finished, the geocomposite, which goes on top of the liner, that allows rainwater to drain to our ditches, it's in. They're working, placing cover over those. And we got the new liner, the existing liner, we located it at the toe of the slope. And they welded the extension onto it. They had to do a lot of repairs to that existing one because it was torn and ripped in a lot of places. But they've got that completed and tied it into an anchor trench. If you look at the item down there that's in bold, back in, when was that, 2005 or something?
Yeah.
There was a manhole and a French drain installed along the lowest section of the landfill that has a synthetic liner under it. For some reason, they cut through that liner and installed this. And once we found that, you have no choice but to fix it, because you have to keep everything above the liner. The French drain was working really well, so all the leachate coming there was it was getting out, but that liner has to be intact under that landfill. So East Tennessee Turf, we've got that they're excavating, that manhole had 2 lines out of it. One was 150 foot in one direction, one 210 in the other. And they've got the 150 foot section, they got to the end of it, the liner still was torn for whatever reason, but just past that they found yesterday the end of that side. And they're working toward the other way to get locate the end of that. You can look, I've got a couple of photographs in there, I don't know that they really do justice. If you'd like to go out there and see what they're into, that first one is going toward the 150 foot section, and you can see how they've had to cut that slope off to locate that liner and that French drain. And about probably, you can see where the liner is, they've had to roll it back to get it out of the way where they're excavating, but they found that, and the liner contractor is coming back in, he said right after Labor Day to make those repairs. And the second photo is going toward the 210 foot section, and you can see the trench there. If you look on the right hand side, you can't really tell good from this photo, but anyway, that you can see the liner is above this French drain. So
with all that rain, did it not wash that ditch completely full of mud again?
no,
It
not
wasn't a lot.
no,
It
not
wasn't a lot.
I mean, I thought it was
Well, I looked for it to be,
a disaster too.
I really did, but it really wasn't.
So it's gonna be a pretty good change order.
Yeah, I'm afraid.
I mean, prepared.
I'm afraid it's going to be probably $100,000.
How about the haul distance, is that gonna be another one?
Yeah, he submitted one for the haul distance, but I'm not in agreement with it. So we're negotiating that.
Not 5 minutes longer than it was, or 3 or 4 minutes?
It's, I forget how many feet it was, but I think he just took the difference in distance and used that to prepare his number. But he's got to break out the haul and the pushing of the dirt. Because, you know, if he's hauling twice as long, then, you know, he's due some extra payment for that. But the extra payment does not include pushing the dirt up on the slopes. And I think he just took a number, found a percentage, multiplied his unit price by it. So he submitted another one, and then we talked yesterday, and he said just forget that one.
Are they finished hauling dirt?
Not yet, because until we get this problem fixed, they can't finish off.
How many rocks did they hit?
Over in the, they got down,
I saw one.
yeah, they got down there, I forget, 10 feet or something, and hit a couple of boulders in there, but I don't think they haven't really got into much rock like they did in the city's part pit.
Are you gonna see that they leave that farmable?
Oh, yeah.
With those
Yeah.
rocks?
Yeah, what they've done is they've got the topsoil stored over there. And they're gonna, once they get the dirt moved, and it's graded to drain, not steep, just, slope, basically the way it was, or maybe a little flatter. And then they'll push the topsoil back on there, and they'll seed it.
Two issues that I went and talked to John Litz, who's farming that, and told him we were gonna mess up his cornfield, and when it was over, we'd compensate him what. If it's all right with the board, when this is finished, I'll talk with John and then come back to the board. Maybe we can forego next year's rent or something to compensate him for his loss.
I think there's about 5 acres or something like that.
7 or 8, I thought.
Maybe, yeah, something, I forget what it was, but anyway, we've got it surveyed and we know how much it was, so.
But we had to have the dirt for the cover.
Yeah.
And the Hall Road, GFL was gracious enough to let us use their Hall Road, and when we finish, we need to see that their Hall Road is like it was.
Or better.
Yeah.
So y'all put out my fire, thank you.
So we'll.
Which fire?
Continue.
My class 2, grass kids playing with fireworks.
But we'll come back with some wrapping up things, but there are some complications on a project this big, there's going to be, but we'll have some adjustments to make toward the end, so just be aware of that.
Yeah, the big one was finding that liner. Once we found that, you can't just cover it up and say it well is there, because it's just, and the state is extremely pleased with the actions that you guys have taken to fix that.
The state ain't happy, ain't nobody happy?
And they're happy.
They're happy.
They're happy about it. I mean,
That's good.
not about it, but what we're doing.
Yeah.
Doesn't carry over the gas, but
They complimented the landfill when we met with them. They were very complimentary that you're being proactive to fix something that should have never happened in the first place.
There was cubic of tons of dirt wasted right there, wasn't it?
What I think, Keith, is, I think since that was the lowest part of the landfill, and it was almost at grade where they started, I think they built a berm in there to start pushing, filling the garbage against, and they never took it out. Boy, they built a berm.
No,
There was a lot of air space.
25 foot deep.
Yeah. And we didn't, all that excavation where they're working to find that French drain and that liner, we hit one little spot of garbage, it might have been that big around. Everything else has just been dirt, which is really
It's a
probably
blessing
probably
now,
a blessing in
but it's not a blessing if they wasted that much airspace.
No, but had it been garbage they were digging in, it would have been a lot tougher for them. Landfill expansion, met with TDEC last week on that. They're moving right along with the submittals, reviewing them. We had to submit some additional or altered runoff calculations and just kind of picking up their comments as they go. Other than that, if there are any questions, as as far as the construction reports, they've all been positive. No violations, no concerns. We've had a little bit of fun trying to determine how big a piece of equipment they could move dirt up the slopes with, and we finally convinced them that if they use something too big, then they were gonna tear the liner up and have to start replacing it. And I think the light bulb came on, they're like, oh yeah, we better. So they've been pretty good to work with on that. I just had to convince them why they needed to use a smaller dozer, and then they put, on the benches, they had to put about 5 feet of clay to protect the liner from those heavy trucks. And, you know, once they did that and started moving, they've really been moving really good on getting finished. This has really, that manhole liner thing has slowed them down. And luckily, they had a window to get the liner contractor back in there to wrap it up. So that's about all I've got unless there's any questions.
Steve, MUS sent us a wastewater permit renewal with a bunch of limits, and I didn't sit down and compare anything significant about changing on those limits.
No, they helped us a little bit on a couple, but most of them are staying the same, and that's basically, all those limits are set based on their treatment plant. And their limits from EPA, that's why those ammonia limits are so stringent, because EPA and TDEC, where they discharge to the NOAA checking, their limits at that plant are really tight. And what they do is they just divide it up between the industries that discharge to it. And your limits are pretty much in line with the other ones. I tried to get that limit increased, but based on their permit from EPA or TDEC, they couldn't do much with it.
Yeah, with the opening of the second wastewater treatment plant down at exit 12, that is where our flow goes now. It doesn't come back to Turk.
It doesn't go there.
All right, anything else for Steve? Thank you, sir. Couple of items to wrap up on. Bill, we talked last month about COVID leave and how to deal with that. You've got something here. Tell us a little bit about what you found, what you got.
Well, two things. One is the federal law, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the federal law that made employers of under 500 people offer 80 hours of COVID leave to their employees, expired in December. It ran from April to December of last year. And so from my understanding, the situation that has surfaced occurred last year under the federal law. So we would need to, we would need to give him up to 80 hours of COVID leave. Now, what's in your packet is, I modified the county's extension. Basically what we did is we extended the conditions of the federal law and gave employees 60 hours, which starting January 1 of 2020 and for 2021, and we've extended it in a couple of votes through September, but not extended the time to use those 60 hours, but not increase the number of hours. So what's in your packet is a policy for 60 hours that would be retroactive to January 1st, and then there's the blank there, the hours expire, and I have date underlined, that would be the expiration date, which whatever the board chose to do, if you chose to adopt this. But this is what the county's doing.
Well, I don't think it's gonna get any better anytime soon.
The part of the frustration we have, when we started, there weren't a lot of answers that you could do in terms of protecting yourself and not getting sick. With, you know, we had distancing, washing your hands and wearing a mask, and you can do the best you could. With the vaccine, it's a little bit different, and I'm frustrated with the level of
Participation.
folks that are taking it. So at the city, we went ahead and say, we did away with any special leave at all. If you're sick, you're sick. If you have to be out because you had a contact, you can take your sick leave, you can take your annual leave. Simply to try and encourage people to have good behavior and to hopefully step up and do the things they need to do to prevent the spread. So I'm personally not, I don't want to leave it open-ended blank check, but I understand there's a situation we need to deal with. But I don't know, Bill, the date that you would recommend for this to expire, have you got an idea?
I mean, the county right now is at the end of September. I would probably go no longer than December 31st. But now, it would be, now what we've done is we've extended the time to use the 60 hours. We haven't increased the 60 hours. So,
How many people have been vaccinated out there? Do you have any idea?
I really don't know.
Don't know.
But I apologize, I've let this language for a long time, hoping there'll be an elegant solution. I don't think there is one. I think Bill has got the best answer we're gonna have. It just is a question of how long you wanted it to go.
Well, if we're doing this for retroactive purposes partially, should we just follow the county's guideline, just mirror that and let it expire in September and then review it again next month and see how the cases are going?
Which is 40 days approximately from now.
are there any situations with other employees that they've missed this calendar year
No.
that would apply to the new policy? So they would still have their 60, they would still have 60 hours, right?
I think we'll just mirror. You want to make that a
That's what,
motion?
yeah, and I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion second to adopt the policy as presented by Mayor Britton with the expiration date of September 30, 21. Any other comments, questions, debate? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, Bill. Again, I apologize for letting this language that. All right, the next item on your agenda is the response to the request for proposals for landfill operations. We received one response. The committee's done some work on that. Keith, kind of bring us up to date.
Okay, first thing I want to do is thank Ashley and Steve. They did the lion's share of the work. After the first meeting, we had maybe 20 questions, and between them, they answered all those questions. And Steve and I went to the landfill and met with I guess the three prospective proposers. And ended up, we had one, and we have evaluated it. It's a good proposal to manage the landfill. If the board is mind to do that, then we'll negotiate a contract and go from there.
So we're really at a decision point. We're to the point where we have a qualified proposer. If you want to move forward, the next step would be to negotiate a contract, which would come back to the board for final consideration. Steve, you and Ashley got any other thoughts or comments from the committee in terms of reviewing process, those sorts of things?
No, not anything other than what Keith, we had a long meeting discussing the proposal. It seemed to be pretty much in order.
Ashley?
That was basically what I was gonna say as well, so I agree with that.
I would say that Ashley did a good job herding us keeping us,
She's a good herds lady.
Yeah, that's the big job.
keeping us on task.
And the other member of the committee is John Hofer, who's been
Yes.
participating in the process.
I would like to put in a form of motion that we retain Dennis as the director of this landfill.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor to keep the interim director and make him director.
I'll second that motion.
Who's first? Who's first, second?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
All right, so we've got a motion second on the floor. Comments, debate? All right, let's call the roll, please. Motion to retain Dennis as director of the landfill.
Mike Bell,
Yes.
Bob Garrett,
Yes.
Tim Warner,
Yes.
Keith Jackson,
Yes.
Matt Lacy.
Yes.
Ventrus Norfolk,
Yes.
Tom Rush.
Yes.
All right, Dennis, looks like we're going to take some interim off of your title and set you up as director. So congratulations, or heartfelt sympathy.
I would like to entertain a motion too. Dennis has done a good job, he's taken on a lot of responsibility. We did raise his pay when we went through the budget process, but I would entertain a motion that we increase his pay to $60,000 on an annual basis and put that in the form of a budget amendment too. And come back in 6 months and maybe review his progress and take a look at that again.
So the motion on the floor is to increase his base pay to $60,000 on an annual basis and to evaluate in 6 months. Do I hear a second?
And if that requires a budget amendment, that would also be in the form of a budget amendment.
Okay.
I second.
Motion and second. Any comments, debate, questions? Again, since we're talking about pay, let's call the roll.
Mike Bell,
Yes.
Bob Garrett,
Yes.
Tim Warner,
Yes.
Keith Jackson,
Yes.
Matt Lacy,
Yes.
Ventrus Norfolk,
Yes.
Tom Rush.
Yes.
So there's your dollar that you can give the women. So there's, you know.
I don't
See,
even,
Gwen, it worked.
I don't even know him. I just know his name.
I thought you knew him the way you stood up and presented him.
I like the way he does.
I want to tell you all why. My background is automotive management. That's where I retired from. I was production manager in the plant over in West Tennessee for 15 years. And I got transferred to Loudon, Tennessee, and I was a distribution manager there for 13 years. And I always advocated, let's promote from within. I never did like going outside. I think people inside already know the operation. It's best to promote them rather than going outside.
They're making everybody.
That's why. That's right.
Amen.
Sure.
All right, folks, well, looks like that's taken care of the business on our published agenda. Anything else you'd like to bring to the floor?
I'd like to address Linda, Ms. Knowles' question there, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I checked with MTS on those two issues you were talking about, and I was on the losing end of both of them, as you know. Well, on the issue of the money, where it had 3 abstentions and 4 for not paying the money, that vote would be counted 4-0.
4-0.
Abstention is 0. Those 3 abstentions counted for 0. And on the vote to terminate Mr. Winters, it was 4 to terminate him and 3 to keep him. So that was a legal vote right there.
Do they know how many members of the board there are?
Well, if there is some member that doesn't vote, that is considered a no vote because it is a no vote.
It's a no vote? It was no vote,
That's
not
right.
a no vote.
That's right, it was a no vote. That's what the MTS said. That's municipal.
You got that in writing?
And you can call the MTS like I did.
No, they won't give it to an average citizen.
That's correct. We won't have our attorneys give you written legal opinions either.
And I didn't expect that. That was kind of a rhetorical question. And I noticed you were not voting again today. Are you representing the city and voting or not?
I'm chairing the meeting and representing the city to the best of my ability.
You're a voting member, are you not?
That's he doesn't want to be, not according to the state of Tennessee.
He is not a voting member?
Folks, this is a debate that's not relevant to the agenda. Anything else we want to talk about today? The board wants to
Chicken.
bring to the floor.
Anyway, the votes were legal.
Thank
Were
you.
they not?
That's my understanding. All right, folks, we appreciate your time. We'll gather together and we'll get Mr. Barnes ready to roll.